Um, yeah, one second. Thank you very much for joining in time as well, and sorry for keeping you waiting. We were trying to work out on some technical issues just to get things rolling. But today's conversation is a big conversation that is probably going to change many a mindset, especially considering what our communities are going through quite often, especially from an African perspective. We tend to imagine and even presume that we do not suffer from things like depression, which is a mental health illness or condition. But tonight, I think we'll be trying to explore the kind of situations that lead people to that. Welcome to this global community conversation. The program is Come, Let's Talk with me, KASSIM KAYIRA. It's 5 minutes past 8 o'clock, and welcome again to another very interesting topic, probably heart wrenching, or probably whoever leaves this conversation tonight might not feel the same way. It's a conversation regarding definitely, I mean, mental health is a big subject across the world at the moment, but then it becomes even more peculiar, more particular when it comes to the Africans, Black Africans, especially considering that our networks of communities, of family, and so on, give us the false sense of confidence that we can deal with these situations even when we don't seek help. So in some instances, we have ended up with situations that have led people to very dangerous situations. And tonight, we are going to be delving into the issue of mental health, but then we are also going to try to give it a different twist that we are not just going to be very medical. We have a medical expert, Dr. Justin Nachimuli Chigozi, who will help us to navigate through this difficult terrain. But of course, now it will be more about you. This program is about you, the viewers, you, the listeners, contributing to the conversation in terms of your personal experiences. Sometimes you get into a situation and you don't know that actually what you're suffering from is depression, which might be an aspect of a mental illness. It might be stress, at work, under pressure to deliver on targets. It might be situations where, for example, like I shared earlier on in the day, where, for example, you've sent money back home and in the expectation and hope that they are going to buy a plot for you and build a house for you. You have all the plans, you start receiving pictures, but abruptly you realize, or suddenly you realize that the pictures that you are receiving were actually not pictures of your own house or your own plot, but indeed someone else's, and you have been duped. That's a very painful experience, and some people have actually, even turned their backs on ever going back home. I know of a situation where, someone spent, nearly 2 years of sending money nonstop, and they were building in the hope of building this mansion that they were supposed to return to. 2 years or 3 years down the road, they decide to board a plane and go back home, only to get there to find that actually it was a Yoyabi answer, as the Waganda would say. The house was non-existent, but not only the house wasn't in existence, even the plot that was supposed to be there wasn't there. And who was responsible? The parents of this very person. They decided that they were not going to, fight with their parents. The person just boarded the plane, came back to UK, and never looked back. He basically made a very painful statement where he said, where he made a statement to say, Abewange Bafude. So this actually, made a huge impact if you can just try to put yourself in that particular situation. But tonight, as I was preparing for this particular program, something happened. I was in a taxi driving with a man who came on board. And always be very careful when you ask someone, when you say to someone, how is your day? Because probably you are prompting them to offload. And people here in the West are sort of free. They can start offloading. The man told me a story that has really shaken me, left me in tears. As a man, crying is not the easiest of things to do. But sometimes you listen to a situation and you see where this is. So I'll go through this very quickly so that we can get to our guest and start at least unfolding this particular difficult topic. This man has been married for 13 years, two children, two boys. A wife comes out of the blue and says they can no longer be together. no specific reason as to whether they've had a fight or whatever. Woman just wakes up one day and says, I no longer feel you and you have to get out. This man, he explains to me, I was actually on our way. He was going to a pub to go and drink because life now he couldn't see any solution. The solution lied in getting between himself and that glass, and that paint made the difference because he could get some sleep. Wife gets out of the house, goes and rents another flat on the agreement, on the understanding that he would be getting 50-50 share in terms of parental responsibility. So he could have the children half the time, just like the mother would. One weekend, wife changes her mind, says no, he cannot. He cannot have access to the children. The reasons that are given are, first, the husband is meant to be alcoholic, and two, he has not been there in the lives of the children because he's been working long days and long nights. And that for the wife, she feels the boy is 11 and the other one is 4 years old and feels like he has not been in their lives because she mentioned something to do with domestic violence of sorts, which is mental. It's not the man was beating her, it was actually mental torture. Apparently, the husband used to tell her that she was becoming very forgetful and she didn't like that. And that was part of the reason that was given. Long story short, the man is out of home, unable to see the children now from the circumstances, resorting to court. The best lawyer has said he will have to cough up to 20,000 shillings. In fact, by the wife making the claim, she doesn't want the man to share in the equity that is in the house, which is about 300,000. Now, these are sort of situations I'm summarizing a very difficult, listening into the conversation because I was foreign. I don't know this person. This was the first time I met them, just asking them how their day was. And the outpouring of all these emotions just told a very powerful story. And it's sometimes through talking, and I think the doctor will come probably to clarify this. Sometimes by talking about things, you offload, you get rid of some of the problems. But when it comes to African community, we always think we are big deal, we are macho, and therefore sometimes we think that we can contain situations, and by containing them, it's not actually burying them and pretending they are not there. Sometimes that's not the best way to go about it. Well, welcome to this conversation. Thank you very much for joining. And like I said, our guest tonight, our doctor, is Dr. Justine Nachimuli Chigozi, who is a mental health expert. She will be helping to navigate into this difficult terrain. Welcome very much, Dr. Justine Nachimuli.
Thank you very much, Mr. KASSIM. I just wanted to make a correction, first of all. A lot of people call me Dr. Justine, but I'm a nurse consultant. The Musao in Luganda. So that is the popular thing, and a lot of people refer to me as a doctor. Obviously, I'm still on the journey to my PhD. So when I get there in a few years' time, I'll definitely take that opportunity to be called doctor, but I'm a nurse consultant. Thank you for having me this evening. And as I mentioned, I'm a nurse consultant. I've been in this role for about 18, 19 years now. So I've walked my journey in psychiatry, and my passion is reaching out to the community about mental health, especially people from Black, Asian, and ethnic minority communities. That has been something I've been banging on since 2006, and it's something I'm still doing right now, mainly in the northwest of England. And thank you for having me this evening.
Oh, fantastic. Welcome very much to the conversation. With the years since 2006, I think you have adequate experience that we can actually delve into that. And I decided to take a different tone because this conversation and the way this program works is that it is very conversational. So we get people to interact. I just speak on anybody, and then we get, sometimes people raise their hands if they have a burning story. But the idea is the more we talk, the more we learn, because from someone's experience, you might find that you think you are really in a bad place. Someone comes out and speaks, and then suddenly you realize your problem suddenly becomes miniature. It becomes a miniature of what a problem would be. But through these conversations, people get the healing. They get a bit of the relief, at least temporary, that allows them at least to go through a night. Therefore, tonight, the issue now, you said you've dealt with Black and ethnic minorities. How bad is the mental health to mental illness within the Black and ethnic minorities, from your experience?
So anyone from our background will realize that it's not a topic that we talk about. So in our communities, we avoid certain topics that we label as shameful, we label as religiously cursed, things that we label as unacceptable. And having, grown up from Uganda for a very long time, I knew that mental illness is not acceptable and is not taken lightly by loads of people. You know for sure that if somebody has a mental illness, parents will go as far as saying, do not get married in that family, do not be friends with that, that person, because their family is crazy. And unfortunately, when we've moved abroad, we have continued with that understanding because that's how we've been culturally brought up. We look at it as a shame. But what I find mainly in us Black, Asian, and ethnic minority communities, we like to hide mental illness and learning disability because we think that we are going to be judged. So we always look at our parenting skills and we think if my child comes out this way or across this way, then they are going to think I'm a bad parent. So what we do most of the time, we keep to ourselves when we are going through that situation. We isolate and then we firefight. And when we fail to get to the point, we tend to sometimes take our children back home for some time. Not just Ugandans, people from Ghana do it, Nigeria, and you think I'll take them to boarding school and everything, will be fine. But actually, there are many, many theories in relation to mental illness. Some of those children have been brought from Africa at a teenage age. Even if a child is 9 years and you bring, you uproot them and bring them to this country, they're basically losing their friends, the family that they know. They're suffering a culture shock. Everything is different. They need to be sat down and things have to be explained to them so they can make sense of it. I came here as a teenager and I struggled. So I do understand that perspective. So children leave the friends that they've known, the food they've known, the environment, and they come here. And that makes them suffer culture shock. And sometimes we don't understand that as parents. We think that because they've come here, we've provided the best lifestyle for them. But that can be mentally destabilizing as well. And then we have theories of mental illness that we don't talk about, where children have been traumatized.
What could cause this trauma?
So they've observed something like domestic violence happening at home, and they cannot question it or challenge it. There is that alienation of parents from children as well. So we work hard, and not very many people from our background are in corporate positions. So we tend to work back-to-back shifts, very long hours. So we do not have that time with our children sometimes. So they are totally alienated. And then for those children that I was talking about who have come from our background as well, they join school and they're totally different. Suddenly you come to an environment where you're the minority, where you speak and your accent is questioned. Where are you from? And those are things that we don't look at as traumatizing. We just think that somebody who is mentally ill should be, stripping naked and violent and aggressive and talking to themselves. But that's how things start. Even someone who has come to this country and simply struggles through the asylum system, loses everything they had in Africa, the degree they had, the good job they had, and they have to start again. That struggle through that system totally traumatizes them. And as time goes on in life, things build up. Things build up and they cause depression, they cause, suicidal thoughts. You start questioning yourself. Some people come to a point of trying to accept self-acceptance, and they try to go through so many relationships, but those relationships keep failing. They don't build resilience to manage and contain and control, but they just keep going. And in the long run, they say to you, somebody jumped into a train, someone is suicidal. But it's been an accumulation of so many things. But because you see someone wearing a full face of makeup, you don't realize that what is inside there is a rotting tomato. Because as you see a tomato, it can be rotten inside, but, really nicely, caged on top, and you think everything is okay. And
but
that's
Justin, there is a dilemma that we have You have mentioned our kind of upbringing, which molds us into a particular way. Now we find ourselves in the diaspora where we have to deal or come face to face with particular situations that we have to deal with. As a family, as members that would be close to these people, given the kind of molding that we have received, how can we intervene? How can we see the signs? Because actually, because we were brought up in a certain way, we might not even be able to reflect or see these particular signs. How do we see these symptoms, and probably what sort of interventions can we make given our limitations that is cultural, culturally binding?
Absolutely. And Mr. KAYIRA, you know what you know. What you don't know, you might never know.
Right.
You know what I mean? So this has been very common during COVID situations where people say to you, how can I identify that my partner is in crisis? They've cut him off jobs. He can't do any shifts at the moment, but he's in the house drinking all the time. One thing you have to start then noticing is that if my husband has been drinking a glass of wine every Saturday, why is he drinking 4 bottles of wine every week? Then there's a problem. Because the way we have been brought up, I have been brought up in Uganda, and we don't make mistakes because they are a shame. We shame our families, we shame our people. But in this country, then we get told mistakes you learn from and then develop yourself further. In fact, that's how we develop resilience. You know very well that when you're in school and you did something wrong, teachers even say to you, shame upon you.
Yes.
And then you say, oh, my name is Justina Kigozi, my dad is Dr. Kigozi. How can they hear that I've done this? And yet, even in clinical settings, when you make a medication error and you go and say, I've done this, they will say, oh, lessons learned. We do not have that as a culture. So you know what you know, and it's difficult for us to learn from what we don't know. And I capture this a lot during parenting sessions with people. Because your parent screamed at you to create fear so you could do something, it does not mean that you're in an environment now where you can where you can do the same thing. You might pick something from what your parents did to develop you, but it does not mean that it sits well with the current environment that we are in and the situation. So back to your point of how do you notice? You need to know your normal, your children's normal, your partner's normal, your friend's normal. And once that normal is beginning to change, you then start to think, what is going on with this person? If this person used to come and see you, chat to you, probably every 2 weeks, and you don't see them in 4 months, what's happening to them? Why are they withdrawing? Why are they isolating? I find a lot of people when I say to them, oh, hi, I'm on the wards, I'm walking around and say, hi, I'm from Uganda. And somebody say, oh God, I hate Ugandans. I don't like to engage with Ugandans. What have they done to you? And some people say to me, oh, they gossip about you and they do this. Hello, Nigerians do the same. Ghanaians do the same. So it's those little things that sometimes people build on and they lose perspective and we end up isolated, depressed, and on our own. But always look for the normal in your child. Look for the normal in your friends. If they bypass that normal, then you have to start looking for some sort of psychological support.
Now, here comes the dilemma, though. And for those who have just joined us, welcome to the conversation. The program is Come, Let's Talk with me, KASSIM KAYIRA. We are live on 75 W Radio, as well as Zoom and on YouTube via Umma Connect. Remember, you can go into the chat room, probably if you're shy enough, and just go into the chat room and get the conversation going. We are talking about mental health, but in Black African communities, especially because this has a specificity, just like we realize that under COVID-19, while the virus affected so many people in so many different ways, when it got to say people of Black and ethnic minorities, the impact was much bigger, but there were particular reasons for that. Tonight, we just want to look at the mental health, but from a perspective where it would be interesting to hear your particular experiences. And I'll be coming to you shortly. We have nurse Justin Nachimini Chikozi. Throughout the conversation, I've seen a couple of other, I think I've seen Dr. Kalunji, You're very welcome to the conversation. It might help probably if you can have, because this is an interactive program where we will be asking questions, but also having a conversation and just hearing what can we do. Nurse Justin, the issue that I have now is we have identified, we've managed to see just, well, probably there are many causes, but you've identified one way of saying if the normal is no longer, if the normal becomes abnormal, that is a sign that would actually ignite you are taking action. The problem is the person who is having a problem came from Africa. The person who has identified this through what the kind of the symptoms, the diagnosis that you have suggested is also coming from Africa. The intervention might not necessarily work. How do I break this barrier now to get to this person to say, you have a problem, we have to do something about it, especially when acceptance of the problem in the first place is sort of an admission of guilt and failure on their part.
So I like what you've said about breaking the barrier. And I've got a program, that I call Breaking the Silence. Because breaking the barrier is very, very important, because even us, we will be scared of telling this person that they have a problem. Have you ever sat down next to somebody who has a bad odor? You will be scared to say, actually, you smell a bit, you will be worried to say that. You won't even feel comfortable to say it. But actually, the fact that they have a bad odor, it could be that they are depressed, they're not brushing, they're not having a bath, they're not showering. It could be that. So that breaking the barrier is the biggest thing. It's identifying professionals in your community, because professionals will break that news in a way that is acceptable and professionally confidential. When people start worrying about someone is going to talk about me, there are certain people in your community, that they will say something to you and you will not hear it again from someone else. So it's that professional approach to things, because this is the same problem we've had during COVID. People have died in their homes, not because nobody could do shopping for them, but because they have closed their doors to their own communities. So for me, I always say to people, even here in the Northwest, I live in Liverpool. A lot of people know me in Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds, and Sheffield. Identify a professional to break that conversation with them. Do you know why a professional is important? Because they understand the concept of confidentiality. If somebody came and told me about their mental health problem, I work with Kenyans, Ugandans, Ghanaians, Nigerians. Some of them are teenage young people who have come to me and said, through our website, MBS, and say, I need to have a chat with you. There are certain things I will not tell their parents because they've asked for them to be confidential. But if I broke that silence and mentioned those things in the community, that person has a right to report me to the NMC. And I could lose my PIN number. It's not something that we like, but I always advise people speak to professionals. They will understand. I've had people coming to me saying, this person told me that I should stop taking the medication because it's just going to make it worse. But when you stop taking the medication, you've actually become worse. Where do we go from here? Approach professionals. That's the only advice I can give.
Now, with the professionals, because now we are lucky that we are beginning as a community to sort of widen out and we can have the Justins that we can run to. But it may be because of these understanding the background to this, because if I go to a professional, the professional I'll have will be a white professional, a qualified person. Yes, they are very qualified, but they are not qualified in understanding these cultural aspects that you do understand. So as a community, we do not have so many Justins that we can run to. Probably the numbers are beginning to grow. And at this point in time, probably we are lucky that we can even have conversations, like this. But the problem is, one, identifying a professional who you would feel comfortable to sort of, speak to. There are times you go, you would go to a sexual health clinic, and getting there, I'm a man. The person I come to is a woman. Now to go and start explaining that a man becomes a problem. So there are certain things that you can't break. You can't break to a person because of those particular barriers that exist. As a community, then what can we do to sort of widen out the scope in terms of?
So you've mentioned something really very, very important, that the Justines are getting bigger. We are widening up. So I graduated in 2002, and I hardly sat in a room where there was another nurse. 2020, you sit in a room, then there's another 4 or another 5. So at the moment, I hear about the Uganda Nurses Association UK. These are nurses in London, in Leeds, in everywhere, that they all sit under this one umbrella of the Uganda Nurses Association. They are over 500. But us, as Black, Asian, and ethnic minority, and actually it's not very common in Asian communities, because I do interact with Asian doctors and, you know, the ones I work with in NHS, they trust each other more than we do. They trust each other more than we do. They support each other more than we do. I have had questions where people say to me, you do a lot of forums. When I'm in Uganda, I do programs. You must be having a lot of money. I don't get paid for any of these things. How do they pay for your time? They don't have to pay for our time. But if professionals like us do not come out to stand for our communities, we are going to stay in the same position year after year.
Yes. I think we'll try and open up the microphones now to allow people to start opening up, because I think the conversation so far, so that we do not monopolize the conversation, will just widen out. Remember the drill, please. If you have any questions, if you have any points, if you have an experience that you'd like to share, please just raise your hand, and then we can hear from you, can get us talking. Otherwise, I'll just bump into you and come straight to you and and get you. But that's how we do the conversation here. The program is Come Let's Talk with me, KASSIM KAYIRA, and we are live on 75W Radio via Facebook. We are also streaming live on YouTube and on Zoom via Umma Connect. You can actually put your question into the chat room if you do not want to raise your hand and come up for that. Now, just before I open up the microphone to our audience, there are these particular, how about empowering local leaders in the community who can then signpost people struggling? I think this is from Sarah Kaumi Kavuma. Thank you very much, Sarah. I'll just, I think, get the full text and get it to Justin to respond. How about empowering local leaders in the community who can then signpost people struggling to the nurses? Would that work? Because actually, that's the question I was going to ask you, the trust issue. You come Justin. Again, then you get it. Every time someone looks at you, almost imagine the person is talking about your mental health.
Now, there's something I always say to people. Waliwo embozi za malwa. Katinga, you are having a conversation when you're drinking, and you talk about everything about yourself. Everything. If you have a friend like that, the day you fall out, the whole world will know, because the way you started that conversation was during Malwa time. You understand? And there's effective conversations. When I'm here in my house and somebody rings me and says, Musao, I have a problem. And I say, come home and we talk about it. And then you arrive and my kids go upstairs and you sit in our living room and we talk within this room. That is an effective conversation. Effective conversation. Be careful where you have your conversation. If you're having your conversation in a bar, it will be shared in a bar. If you're having your conversation in an effective, confidential environment, it will be that way. Empowering community leaders is an amazing measure. NHS uses that a lot. But also what we have to be able to notice is what kind of community leader are we empowering? Because we've also been in situations, I've lived long quite in London for over 10 years and then decide. So I know these things. Sometimes you empower a leader who then also becomes a problem in the community, who constantly shares other people's problems with everybody. So empowerment of community leaders is amazing. It links in well with health, healthcare. It links in well with immigration. It links in well with asylum support. But how you do it is very important, and how you choose that person.
Right. I'd like to get now open up the conversation, widen it out a little bit, just to hear your personal stories, your personal experiences. I'll start with my own, Justin, because sometimes people are shy and they sometimes just need to hear a story to evoke them into action. Now, personally, I've realized that as a journalist now, nearly 30 years as a journalist, starting in Rwanda immediately after the 1994 genocide, and then ending up at the BBC World Service for 17 years. One thing that I realized that as journalists, quite often you will see that you can go to a battlefront, and at the battlefront, the soldiers, when they come back, now they've taken the issue of post-traumatic stress disorder very seriously. So soldiers are getting a lot of the counseling and support to be able to deal with that. As journalists, unfortunately, we look like we are the film stars in a movie in which we cannot die, film starter. And what happens is that you are beginning to carry the kind of burden you carry continuously, you start piling up a lot. I started thinking as I started sort of scaling back a little bit into the frontline journalism, that suddenly in Rwanda, after the genocide, I interviewed close to 200 women rape victims of the genocide. And these were not just your usual one rape, it was gang rapes with a lot of pain that went with that. Women would be gang raped, and then off the back of that, they would throw like coins in their private parts. They would get women who are pregnant and just sort of slice their stomachs to get the fetus out. These were all things that at the time I felt like I was working on a story and therefore didn't take so much into it. 20 years down the road, some of these things are beginning to come back to me, and they become heavy on you. And suddenly it becomes a mental issue because it's the problem that you've carried for so long and you thought you could manage it with time, but then these things sort of start playing back in the mind. How do you start, especially when a problem has existed for such a long period of time? How do you start opening up the barriers to start dealing with it? Is it possible to get counseling for something that goes back ages? This could be, for example, even to children who have been abused in homes and that happened over a long period of time. Is it possible for them to sort of have a way that they can overcome such a thing? Maybe let's start from there, Justin.
Of course, like you said, at first you mentioned the word counseling, but counseling is low-level therapy. And the situation that you're defining is something that has a root, a stem, and is now growing flowers. So if you think about that, you need deep-rooted therapy like psychological therapy. So if people use counseling for that, it's just not the best approach. But what you're saying at the moment is absolutely right. Journalists don't get that sort of support. Your brain is like a little cupboard. It keeps things, and sometimes you might not know that those things are kept there until something similar happens and triggers something that happened years ago. So like you've mentioned, people who have suffered sexual abuse, domestic violence. Somebody could have suffered a sexual abuse at 9 or 10 years and then thought has dealt with it as a child, and that's okay. And they could be 30 and they observe not somebody being sexually abused, but maybe somebody being handled in a rough manner, or and that could trigger what happened in the past. So that's how this situation happens, Mr. KASSIM. Like you think you've dealt with it 10 years down the line, something similar happens, it unravels everything. And this is why we tend to use deep-rooted psychological interventions for war veterans. And in this country, we actually also work with media people on this. So media people have been on the front line. I know something similar in Uganda. I've worked with a young man who was in Southern Sudan and was involved in similar situations, but they get treated for post-traumatic experiences. But a lot of them do end up on SSRIs as well, what we call serotonin reactivators. These are antidepressant medications, because when they go through situations like that, they struggle with sleep. They struggle with, looking after themselves. They struggle with self-management. They struggle with controlling emotions. I don't know if you have seen a man cry uncontrollably. So these are situations that veterans go through, but there is treatment for people like that. It's just that in countries, in low-income countries, it's not appreciated, it's not being used. But in a country like this, people do get support.
Thank you, Justin. I can see Teddy Nampima's hand is up. Just to flag, because we have a person who is from home, please feel free. Anaitaka kuongea Kiswahili, you can ask your question in Kiswahili. No Ruganda tomenyeka nole mwo kubuza choyagala okubuza gachikule nnyo okwatula mu Luzungu. Let it not be a barrier, and that's the benefit of having programs like this. It's a global community conversation. Teddy Nampima, please go ahead. Teddy, I don't see your mic being on. Your video is on, but your mic is not on. So you might probably need to log out and log in again, because I can't see your microphone. Therefore, you might not be able to communicate. Because I'm trying to unmute you, and there's nothing to unmute. Teddy, do you mind logging off and then logging on, please? Teddy, if you can hear me, you might not be able to speak because we can see your video, but we cannot see your audio. Your microphone is not on. So if you just get the microphone on, please, and then we'll come to you. Harriet, I think I saw you hiding in there. Hi, hello, Harriet. Hello, Harriet. I'll go to the usual suspect while I get the visit. Harriet is there. Harriet, thank you very much for joining this conversation. How are you today?
Oh, I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much for joining the conversation. We are
oh, thank you. Thank
and
you.
we are trying to share experiences to see if you have a story to tell, or do you have a question for Justin?
Sorry, I'm just joining. I'm just joining in. I don't know where you are
now.
now.
I saw you coming in. All right, I'll just go to those who have been around for a bit, so that then we can get you settled in. That might help, actually. I'll come to Fauzia. I think Fauzia, if you don't mind unmuting. Fauzia, are you there?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the conversation.
Thank you.
Yes, you've had Justin, and we are talking about mental health, different things that could trigger these situations. You have a situation that probably could have affected your own mental health.
Can I just first say that with mental health, what Justin hasn't said yet, I don't know if she's going to say it after some time, you have to want help.
Yes.
A person has to need help, to acknowledge nti oli mulwadde. Basically, oba waliwo ekikutawaanya.
Yes.
Until then, most of us are in denial. Bogamba nja kuba bulungi. That's the general feeling.
Yes.
I've worked in mental health for 10 plus years. And I have to admit, most cases, I'm one of those people who look at, when I've worked with drug and alcohol, I'm thinking, ono yetaaga kutwala Kampala bamukube ekibooko. You understand? Then there is the Banobagund personality disorder. Nabo, in my head, I'm usually like, ono n'omutwala Kampala kibooko nga 10 n'olugadde engulu. That was normally the thought that came to my mind when you're working with these people.
Why would you think that way? What exactly happened? Why would you think that way?
Because a person with Gundi personality disorder, they are fine. They understand exactly what's going on around them.
Right.
Then when you're not giving them attention, when you're not
yes.
Yeah, they decide to go on a rampage, like chaotic.
Yes.
However, I also have to admit that there are moments when they dip. There are moments when the actual illness itself is, taking place. But on these occasions where they're just being chaotic is when I'm thinking,
Justin, you want to come in there?
Yes, I wanted to mention something to Fauzia. You know, when you say that a person with mental health must need help or has to have help. So mental illness has different pathologies and different takes. So what we always do to ourselves in our culture, we keep waiting for that moment where, you think I'm going to be okay. Everything is going to be fine. And then what that leads to, it leads to acute mental illness. People end up being sectioned. People end up with forensic cases whereby most Black and Asian ethnic minority people end up in forensic sectors where they've had a crime and ended up assessed by mental health, because we keep waiting for that moment where, I'm going to be fine. I'm just feeling a bit low in mood. You have postnatal depression and you think, it's all right to cry because I've just had a baby. But actually you're developing postnatal depression. You're hearing voices and some people say, or something like that. And then things develop. I don't want to go into that big picture of it, but our culture perspective does not allow us to be insightful. We don't quickly say, I think I need help. Culturally, perspective contains us to manage ourselves. Where she said that we have to need help. If somebody's an alcoholic, you want them to say, I have a problem. If somebody's a drug addict, you want them to say, I've got a problem. If somebody has schizophrenia, depression, postnatal depression, and the pathology is totally different, they might not be able to identify that they need help. Now, she talked about some diagnoses like personality disorder. So it's quite a new diagnosis, about 15 years now. When I graduated in 2003, we never had personality disorder. It was actually just starting from prisons. It was very new. But actually, this is deep-rooted. It's a lot to do with people's upbringing. We've got people with borderline personality disorder who cannot trust anybody, who just want to keep to themselves, who thinks everybody's a liar, who think it's everybody's problem apart from them. They can never reflect on anything at all to say it's my fault.
Justin, I wanted just to flag something, which is quite often now we are sort of speaking about people as if they are detached from us, but there are particular things that can lead to mental illness or mental health being affected. For example, and the reason I was putting out here, James Omoni, I'll be coming to you. I can see your hand is up, and the chat room is beginning also to get excited. Cynthia Kalungi says all good in the Black community. Hajara says, no, Fauzia, that is a bad mentality. No one picks up one morning and wants to have help. Hope is saying Michael. Just in the issue, I wanted actually to flag this to Fauzia, which is Fauzia. We've spoken about your years working mental health with people who have mental health issues. But very recently, one of the issues that can actually lead to mental health, our mental health being affected, is loss. You recently lost your dad.
I wasn't given the chance to finish though.
Oh, right. No. Actually, so it was good that I wanted to go down there so that we can hear the personal experience. It is, how have you coped yourself, once you got it lost? How have you been able to cope? What is it? Have you sought any help? Do you feel like you're able to, do you have enough support around you to be able to deal with that? Because that's a big blow, knowing how close you are with your dad. Yes.
And can I just say, with me, my problems, I've always been, I am a strong-minded person. At least that's what I know about myself. But with my problems started on that fateful 21st of November, when I was so excited, I'm going to Uganda, I've prepared everything, I've, worked really hard. And then I turned into an air road and I got an accident. The roads were icy. Now, I have to say, I've worked with mental health patients, like I said before. And much as you're helping them, treating them, doing everything for them, in the back of your head, because you've never experienced this back home, you're thinking vehicles. And I know people here are going to say, no, 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 you don't wake up wanting it. Yes, you don't wake up wanting it, sorry. It's just one of those things that we never grew up with. I want people who I didn't even know that we had Ibutabika. You understand? So anyway, I get the accident. I'm taken to hospital. I'm pregnant. I've broken my hip, femur, and the foot. Literally, I'm screaming on top of my head. But like they say, when you're in pain, the brain shuts down. You understand? The brain shuts down because this was extreme pain. The brain shuts down because it can't deal with that pain. That's minor pain. The brain can deal with it and the pain will go away. But the pain I was going through, Obongo was shutting it down. Now, to get my brain back into those high doses of morphine, codeine, all this cocktail of medications, that in itself was a struggle. I couldn't look at the TV. Excuse me.
I'm coming out. Pulling times are usually doing limiting times.
I couldn't watch TV. And that's my favorite pastime. I couldn't read. You understand? Right now, like that time was COVID time. Trying to get like a psychologist to speak to you was hard in itself. You understand? They take too long, 6 months before you could even book someone. When I finally got someone to speak to, Nambuza, do you drink alcohol? Do you do this? Do you do that? Eventually, like, you know, that frustration of get to the point. I say to her, listen, I'm a Muslim. I don't do this. I don't do that. I don't do that next. So what do you think of this? I explained to her. Now, unlike most, the problem with the mental health, now is this. They have this thing where they do everything by the book. Or you know what the symptoms is, you have to have these symptoms. You understand? If you don't have these symptoms, then Tori will be in you. So this woman, she asked me all the questions. Do you sleep? I say to her, yes, I sleep fine. Do you do this? Are you dependent on drugs? I say to her, no, because naturally I hate taking drugs. Katinagenda nawandika gundi document ye najiwandikira jipi namugamba nti nochi. Oh, she's fine, bichi. And then she put me off the helpline. So I go back, like I normally do like a body MOT. I'm saying, Nambuza, how are you feeling? This is what's going on, bichi. So Nancy Zako. But just before that, then my best friend dies. It was the worst. It still is the worst time of my life because sometimes I'm like, of course, and you're thinking, oh, surprise, we're just joking. But in the back of your head, you don't have food there. He's never going to come back again. And you know how it is, COVID. They don't even allow you to do those things that are supposed to make you feel better. And come to the fact, okay, yes, again, say, we've done this and this for them. They don't give you that chance. So basically, I'm in that state of, am I going? Am I coming? Where am I? And even if I decide that, okay, I'm going back to work, what am I going to do there? Do I really want to go to work? You understand? Then you find yourself, I'm not aggressive. I'm not naturally an aggressive person. So I'm not going to be I just basically, like you said, keep to myself. I switch on the TV and I just look at it. Sometimes I catch myself watching something. Name said everything, I just staring. And I guess having a little child, now full up busy, you know, but it's not, it's the thing is, everyone keeps telling me you're depressed. Yeah. I know that I'm depressed, but I don't know whether, like you said, you know what? I'm not feeling Burundi. I remember, was it Saturday? I went out and I was sitting with a girlfriend of mine, and she said to me, Neda, your label, totally depressed, this is what's going to happen. And in my head, I'm thinking, but that's how I'm feeling right now. It might not be like a medical issue, but it's what I'm feeling. I'm not feeling well. And the fact that you asked me how I'm feeling, what the hell am I supposed to do? You
Justin,
know, so
Justin, you can hear Fauziya.
Yeah.
Let's allow Justin to come in here. Let Dr. Kalunji, please. Dr. Kalunji, I'll ask you as well.
I was just actually listening to Fauziya, and it is quite sad to hear. But if we can share details after here, because we need to talk about pathways. The reason I advocate for culturally sensitive care, there are certain questions that we should not ask people because of a certain background. If I'm assessing a Jewish person, there are certain things I will not ask because they're not attributed to Jewish people. And it's sad because in mental health, I'm now in commissioning. I don't work on the wards anymore. I manage wards. But you have this bureaucratic way of working, doing initial assessments the same way. Why would you be asking a Muslim person, do you drink alcohol? So that culturally sensitive approach, we need to be talking pathways with her. She's saying she got assessed and she was taken off the assessment, but we need to understand which pathway. I don't know if she went via IAPT or crisis management, but if we can, please, if we can exchange some contact with Fauziya and see how we can help.
Please, because I think that is really absolutely necessary. Fauziya, if you don't mind, I think we'll have a conversation. You will have a conversation with Justin, and we can see how we can help. Definitely, because oftentimes.
Let me just ask, because I don't know if it's confidential, you don't have to mention. There's an accident that I heard about in COVID with a pregnant lady, and they thought she was Ugandan. Was it in Manchester?
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah, I do travel a lot to Manchester, Fauziya, so we can exchange some things. I know IAPT in Trafford, I don't know if you're in Trafford area or something, but we can definitely support you because there are so many things that you've mentioned that we can't talk about here.
That need to be followed up. And she says here in the chat room, I was taken for a PTSD assessment. So Justin, I think we will have that conversation at least and pick up, because I think that's the benefit of opening up in conversations like this, where we can have at least open up a conversation, because you can see the way where we began with Fauziya. It was all about somebody else until it comes to her. Then you start seeing,
and it's been loss after loss,
yes.
after loss. And sometimes people look at me and they say to me, but actually there are also certain things that I've gone through as a person that have made me go through certain situations to build resilience, to be able to move forward in life, because there are experiences that we all go through: relationships, loss, death. All these things are things that trigger mental illness. And some people do not look at it as if it's happening. They think, it's not like that. Everybody's different.
Thank you very much. Just to remind you, the program is Come Let's Talk with me, KASSIM KAYIRA, and we are live on 75W Radio. You can also follow us actually on 75wradio.com, and as well as Umma Connect, where you can actually see us as well on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Zoom, where we are broadcasting or streaming at this particular moment in time. Dr. Karunji, I've seen you. It's the first time probably I'm seeing you in this conversation. I'll just ask you to unmute probably and contribute so far what you have heard while we get Mr. Omoen to get ready. Carlos says, thank you so much, Justin, for offering to help her. Virtual hugs to Fauzia. Dr. Karunji, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you very much. I don't know whether you can hear me.
We can hear you fantastically well. I wish your video was on.
I wish.
Are you on top of the roof?
I'm probably laid in bed asleep.
Right. Well, we are discussing a very powerful conversation, very personal, very touching, which actually, especially in our communities, as Justin has been explaining, is one that is a subject that is like taboo. We've not been tampering with this. Now we have scratched the leopard something, as they would say in Uganda.
Yes, I've been listening, and to be fair, I guess we're talking about the diaspora and obviously the communities, our communities in the diaspora. I personally believe that there's an element of I've been here in this country for several years, but I believe there's an element of a cultural shock that hits people when they come here. You know, you leave your countries thinking you're going, to, the best place in the world. America knows how to market it very well. You know, the land of opportunities. You're going out there, but then you get over here and things hit you by shock. And to me, I believe that things begin around that time, and that carries on for quite a while. But many of us, obviously, you think, get over this. One of the shocks that hits people, you come from home, you've done your studies, you've done your academics, you think, I'm going to get out here, everything's going to run fine. You get over here, and the first thing they tell you is they don't even recognize your academic qualifications. So immediately that hits you so bad, because it means that all the time you spent getting to that point is useless. You're going to start again.
Yes.
You then, brave it, as most people would do, and you get into the system, and you decide, I'm going to fight the system, and I'm going to do my best to get into the system. And we all have our experiences. I've had my own experiences. I've shared them with some people, going along the way. Obviously, when you're in a particular place, people don't know where you came from and what you went through, but everybody has gone through some serious things. And this is one of them that really hits people. It throws you back 5-6 years, and it's difficult to explain. And in other instances, you get to a point where you manage to get yourself into some sort of job and you're working, and then the colleagues you're dealing with, who may not necessarily be of African origin, maybe the natives, are sort of given a different bar. So every time you're given a bar, if I put it in terms of hurdles, if they're jumping a 1 meter hurdle, they seem to put a 2 meter hurdle for you. At every stage, you seem to be jumping something higher to go to the next level or to move forward. And that hits us again. And you're asking yourself, why us? And some of these barriers I've not even seen. They're invisible barriers. That is, I'll put that aside.
So
now,
when you say invisible barriers, Doctor, what exactly?
I'll give you a very simple example.
Mm-hmm.
You join. I would say, let us say you join a particular company, job, you're working together, and you realize that the colleagues you joined with, same level, same everything, move a lot faster than you would do, and you seem to be moving backwards, if at all, and obviously that doesn't work very well with most people.
Yeah.
You have nobody to talk to, because the people you're talking to don't understand what you're talking about. You say, what do you mean? We don't see any problem. Even when you talk to HR, I'm talking about companies where you have got the human resource department. You got the human resource department, they don't even understand what you're talking about, because whatever is being done in a very, very subtle way. But that subtle way of operation is pushing you down very quietly and depressing you and your fellow colleagues. I've seen this happen. I've had people go through this. But because it is done, I would call it under the table, you have no way of proving that it is being done. You have no way of putting it out there. I'm going to give you a simple example. If you're doing a job, for example, I think in nursing, or there are levels. So you join at a certain level, and then suddenly the colleagues you had are moving to level 2, level 3, and you're asking yourself, or level 4, level 5, what do I need to do to be moving at the same pace? And you find that in order to move just one step forward, you actually need to do 3 times what they need to do. And that's something that depresses people. Now, let's put that aside and get back to this culture shock I talked about. Back home, most people, you have come from homes where you have a lot of support, including your family support, including your people who can help out at home. Get over here, and that support is simply not there. You're gonna have to cope with everything individually. You, your partner, your kids, just like you have to cope during the day at work. And again, that is another something that hits a number of people here. And coping with it is not an easy thing. Just adjusting. I'll give you an example. We got a visitor at some point, came over and said, how do you guys cope with all this? I can't even start believing that you guys can cope. You go, you have to work the whole day, and then you come back, and then all these things to do in the home. I just don't understand how you're coping. And I told this person that don't be surprised that some of these will be happening soon in our country. The other day I called back to Uganda. I'm from Uganda, back to Uganda, and I asked somebody a question. And they said, do you know what? I said, these days, we just wake up, lock up our houses, and go to work, come back in the evening. We cannot stand anymore having these people, helping us around, because what happens is you get thieves coming into your house, and you have all sorts of people. You don't know whether it's a syndicate between those people. And I say it may not be a common thing, but it is happening. Anyway, I put that again onto one side. We then go back to this other point about the stigma. I think there's a stigma element. When somebody comes out and says that they don't feel well, back home they used to call them all sorts of names. There were several different names. I wouldn't.
Zonto.
Exactly. We have they have short circuiting wires and all sorts of things that they used to use. Okay, these don't help at all. I remember when I was growing up, I had a colleague of mine, who was one of the brightest people in our year when we were studying. He was in fact, he was the best in the country. This guy was absolutely bright, and we all move on to the next level, after A levels, and the next thing I know, I hear he's not well, and I said, he's not well. What happened? I go and meet him the next time, and I could barely understand what was going on with him. And apparently, something had gone wrong. He joined the university, but declared the first year a dead year. And then they put him on some medicine. And unfortunately, this medicine, antidepressants, he didn't even spend a year. The next thing I knew, he committed suicide. Now, that was he was one of my best friends. That was really bad. That hit us big time. And what shocked me, I came over here to the UK, and there was another person. And again, they put them on these antidepressants. They were under the same conditions. The next thing I knew, they jumped out of the building, down, again, killed themselves. Now, when you hear some of these stories, they hit you hard. Coping with such a type of thing, if somebody has been very close to you and such a thing happens, loss of loved ones can also hit people absolutely hard, and how they cope is a difficult thing. Now I'll switch over to another. We talked about coping mechanisms. Different people have different coping mechanisms. Some people decide to just get friends and have a chat. Back home in the good old days, I know nowadays it's different. There's a bit of curfew in Uganda, and it's not as easy to move around. There are a lot of places where you can go, and people call it in Uganda kusala pressure, whatever they mean there. But they're trying to, exactly, they're trying to say, to ease this stress.
Mm-hmm.
You come over here, call a friend, says, I've got a shift. Call another friend, I've got a shift. I'm going on a night shift. I'm going on a shift. I've just been on a shift. So everybody seems to be going out on a shift, or they've been on a shift, either they're sleeping or they've just. So in the end, you find that small network that would have given you that chance to, even if it's just a phone call, you find that people are generally absolutely busy. So that, and they're busy not because they need to be busy, they're busy because of all the bills they've been hit by here and the things that they need to do. So that's not helping in its own self. So it's finding that even the coping mechanism you would have had becomes a tricky one. Now, some of them then resort to things like, you watch television, maybe people who enjoy football would switch on football and watch the football. But then even with football, you may find that the man may want to watch the football, but his partner may not be interested in football at all. And then that creates its own issues in its own way, and vice versa. You may find that your partner is.
Dr. Kalunji, Daniel here in the chat room is saying in Africa, especially among men, they find it hard to open up because of stigma. African men are supposed to be macho, never cry. However, when the cup overflows, it's too late. You agree with that?
Yes, I do agree, because again, it comes back to that culture thing. You're supposed to bottle it, what we call bottling it. The whites call it the stiff upper lip, where they just bottle it and, they hope that things will get better. But personally, I think when you talk about it, it helps. Obviously, there's an element of confidentiality and whom are you going to talk to, and make sure that the person you're going to talk to is going to be somebody who will be able to support you and not necessarily make your problem something of. And I agree with you have a community and you've got some leaders in the community that can help with this. I agree that can make a difference. But my plea to everybody probably on this committee is to understand. I've talked about several things, loads of things. But out of those things, people will associate themselves with something, The key thing is each one of us as an individual, we do have a role to play. The role could be a simple role of listening to someone talking. And there's power in communication. If you have something that you're bottling and you tell it to somebody, it is almost like somebody who's been carrying a weight, and then you have unloaded yourself and passed it on to somebody else or put it down. So talking to somebody, offloading, exactly. That's very, very important. That don't bottle it. Talk to somebody you think is close.
Dr. Kalunji, please stay there, just as well as Musau Justin, because I'm sure we're going to hear more compelling stories.
Thank you very much.
Just says in the chat room, thanks, Sister Fauzia, for being brave to share your story. A sorrow shared is a sorrow lesson. I pray you get the help.
Yes, thank you very much for giving me a chance to talk.
Please stay there, Dr. Kalunji. Don't go to sleep yet. We are going to hear. Justin, you wanted to make a quick intervention before I cross over to. I wanted to bring in
just a quick intervention, really, in terms of what Dr. Kalunji has been describing, environmental factors, social factors, and all those areas. But also what we've noted a lot in the diaspora at the moment is the bridge between mental illness, autism, learning disabilities, and family environment. So during COVID, I've seen a lot of pressure for parents or families that have children who are autistic with learning disabilities or special needs. And it's difficult because you men, you leave this to the women. And we are also human beings. The woman is also a human being. You go into an environment and the woman is picking the child from school, taking them swimming, and the man is just at home. So that pressure created crisis moments at home where people were just literally shouting at each other, and it also created crisis moments for children. So mental illness during that time in COVID was on the high. Dr. Kalunji mentioned about men. Men have been the biggest, they commit suicide, but they complete suicide. So women attempt suicide, and sometimes we survive because of the methods we use. So we tend to use overdoses or drown ourselves, while men tend to use ways of completing suicide. They tend to hang themselves.
Or jump over.
Or jump from a massive building.
That's very common.
So by the time a man tries to commit suicide, they're not even trying, they've comprehended it and decided, while a woman is crying for help. And the biggest cause of that is because men just do not communicate their problems. They just,
Thank you very much, Justin, because actually what it is now, Dr. Kalunji, Justin, come in at any point in time so that we can have the conversation going. Let's just try to widen out the conversation a little bit now. I can see Akaya Chivumbi. Is it Akaya Chivumbi? Assalamu alaikum. Hello, Akaya. Are you there? I see a hand. Oh, Rose, sorry. Yes, Rose. Hello, Rose.
Hello, everyone.
Please
I'm just
go ahead.
listening to this conversation,
Yeah, hello.
and I've been invited by Justin,
All right.
Saul Justin. So, as a Ugandan in the diaspora, I really understand how we can quickly get serious mental issues because we come from a community whereby our grandmothers didn't even lock their back doors. Anybody who walks past can just join in a meal. You can just, everybody's your friend in the communities where we come from. And then you come here, majority of us go through gruesome immigration issues, where you lose your identity. So that alone kind of breaks you from the beginning, just like Dr. Kalunji said, and you kind of lose your identity. Then, of course, the weather and the everything else, you change jobs, you have to do anything that pays your bills. So whatever you thought your life would be before you came here, or whatever you envisioned it to be, just goes out of the window. So for me, one of the key issues, two key issues I want to mention is we need to start learning to live for ourselves. And we need to start learning when to stop, when to say no, and to put ourselves first. Because it sounds selfish, but if you're not there, you're of no good, not even to your children. If you're not well mentally, you are not good to anybody. Your children, your husband, and those nearest to you are the ones who suffer the most. So we need to learn to know when to rest. I know it's very difficult. We need to know how to stop.
I wish, Rose, I wish the Ugandan audience was actually watching, because I can see there are quite a number of people who are in Kampala, and I actually thank them very much, because it's pretty late in Uganda at the moment, and for them to be up and following the conversation, I think shows the interest. But part of the pressure that we get in the diaspora are those endless phone calls that come in, and all of this is on top of
even those in Uganda, wherever you are, one of the biggest stressors is what will people say. Bananda babatia, banagamba batia. I have learned that should be the least of your worries, really, if you want to live happily. Everybody is going through something.
Rose,
everybody is going through something. So
there is a wedding. Rose, there is a wedding. There is a wedding, and you have to make contributions. No, there is a Rose the pressure.
If that's what I have, then from my heart, that's what I'll give. So Bobanga or Sazonti, you're removing that bananda babatia. If it comes from the heart, so be it. So be it. So we've got to consciously say, I'm putting me first. I am putting me first for the first time. Never offer, they will be alive.
Rose, Bakubuze Chibuzo Farida in the chat room is saying, great point, Rose, sorry, but how do we start that process? Since we lost ourselves from the time we stepped into this country.
It's by being truthful, telling them how you're grafting. Because some people, we are living the life. Tell them the truth. That
Mrs. Sally.
I'm barely surviving.
Mrs. Sally, in psychology, we call that problem solving.
Yes.
You understand who you are, what you can afford, and then problem solve by reaching out to your priorities. If what I have can feed me, pay my fuel, look after my children, and I've got a balance of 20 pounds that I give you, so be it. I will not be worried about you saying, Musawa Justina Tuate Olwabiri. I will not be worried about that, because I have bypassed. And this all comes by what we call resilience. When you go through so many experiences, Mr. KASSIM, you mentioned in your video you sent me earlier on, you've been sending money, people are stealing your money. They're not building the house you want to build. They are telling you somebody's dead, but the person is alive. They are telling you your child needs £1,000 for tuition, but only needs 500. When you go through certain experiences, you build something we call resilience in mental health, the ability to cope through a situation. Kati, if I build my resilience, even if you come and say, Musawa yakoze bwati, that is your opinion. I know what I want and what I am. Kati netuddayo in beginning when natandikidde that culture sensitivity, we believe in kuswala. Nze ndi mwana Dr. Kigozi banandaba batya. Nze ndi mwana wa Gundi banandaba batya. That is them. But what can I afford? That is how we problem solve. And you start that journey every day. It gets harder in the beginning, techiba changu. Chiringa omukyala wonobera mu first relationship ne failinga, neddako ne failinga. You meet someone who sends a siri ddamu kubeera mu relationship. Kubanga answala. Omulala n'agamba, well, it failed since asoose. Then I'll try another one. Then I'll try another one. That is resilience. And that's how you build it.
Justin, can I adjust something?
Yes, my dear.
When I work with women, as you know, and a Nigerian lady shared something that was very beyond sad. She had relationship issues and she cheated on her husband. Then she confided in a friend. This friend recorded her and shared with the world on social media. This woman went to Belgium and killed herself. So one of the biggest issues the Trinam community is, who do you share with? Omuntu omubuulyako ekizibu kyo n'akifuula ki? Emboozi. Okitegeera? So that's another thing, that people don't have people to talk to in confidence. Can you imagine that woman? She went and cut her wrists, left her children with her auntie. But all started with, from Munang. I've done this. How can I get help? So when somebody tells you something sensitive, we need to be sensitive about where we share.
We had that conversation at the beginning of this program, actually, and we were talking about something we call Mbozi Zamaluaya. If you're out clubbing in a pub and you start talking about everything, my mom used to send away Yambulo Buzwinabo. Yeah. If that is the kind of environment you're sharing, certain sensitive things, just know that when you fall out with this person, those are the sensitive things that are going to come out. Now, Mrs. Sally, I know you work with women, and I've come to your office sometimes and I say, I need to speak about this situation because you're professional in this area. The environment I've chosen to speak that, certain thing with you, most of the time defines where that conversation will go. If I've chosen to come to you in a confidential manner, it will be confidential. If we remember as children, we used to be told, Mbulira goita na, you tell me your friend and I'll tell you who you are. And that was a very good, that was used everywhere I went. And I went to Nan's schools and they always used to say to me, if you tell me your friend, I'll tell you your personality. So we as human beings, we are adults, we choose who we tell these things, but we must be able to find confidentiality in the people we have conversations with. And that story is very, very sad. We've had such stories, from people, not people who have committed suicide, but people who have actually gone back to their partners and said, your wife is cheating on you. And then they end up even going with that man and they become the next wife.
Now, the question here is from Farida, who says, this sounds all very good from a professional side, but can you please advise us what can an ordinary person do, the lay person? And so probably it's about starting, actually getting the courage to start. And I think Nefa is saying, Farida, be you. Speak the truth. And I always say, every human being is talked about, whether you do good or not, people are entitled to their opinion. Okay, let's try and bring in some new people as well into the conversation. We hear another story. I get Sarah Semakura. Are you there? Sarah?
Wa alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa
Wa
barakatuh.
alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome
Yeah.
to the conversation. You've been in the Kamori all along.
Well, the program is quite interesting and does
Very.
bring back some
Mhm.
memories from the past. Some are still alive and some are quite in the past. When they talk about the issue of immigration, that on itself has left a lot of scars in some of our hearts. And we still live in fear. Even when you acquire the papers, you still find yourself really living in fear. You don't feel like you're a real normal human being because we have gone through so much. And I've had stories from others whereby people have lost their nationalities in the bid to get papers. You know, you're Ugandan, you know, you're born Ugandan, but then you have to pretend, to be Rwandan or Zimbabwean in order to get the papers. You change your names, that is losing your identity. So it's quite been a very big struggle. I remember a time when I used to be working underground before I got my papers, whereby I would always look on my shoulder, and I would even fear getting money from a cash machine. If I saw a police car around, I would be thinking that they're after me. And then it has been quite a very, very difficult time. It still is, I would say, much as we have papers, but some people have spent many years not going home, because if you got your papers as a refugee, then you can't get home, but go back home to see your family. You've got children you haven't seen, some you've seen videos. So it's quite really hard. And then you have the loneliness whereby people live on their own. And you know, when we leave our home countries, most of us come because we are on the wall, as in things have not been really great. You don't have any income, then you come here to get to some greener pastures, and then you face another nightmare, you see. So it's quite hard. But I really thank Justin and Rose. They have pointed out so many points and many
Dr.
things
Karunji there, I think,
that
well.
would be really, and Dr. Karunji too, which make you reflect and also have a think of what is going on and what more one would do to make their lives better. But dealing with some of the issues, one thing I've come to understand that sometimes accepting the situation where you are is quite major. Because if you still want to be the same person you've been, if you are in high ranks, so you are in a better society, and you don't accept that things have changed or tables have turned and try and cope with the new situation, that in itself can really break you. So you have to accept and also be able to say that it's okay not to be okay, and it's okay to say I'm not okay. That could be something that could help. Yeah, but I don't know what more to say, KAYIRA, because it's triggered a few emotional things.
I actually wanted to tamper into those emotional aspects, because that's the whole idea of tonight's conversation, because a lot of times, and that's the struggle that we are having. The idea of it does not come easy for someone to sort of just feel the courage to sort of come out and let it out. But you realize that the more you tamper with this, a lot of it is the kind of relief that you receive. But I think you've given a sort of a general view, and you've touched on a very, very important issue, which is the issue of immigration. You almost want actually to sort of deal with this issue independently, just to look at the impact of immigration on, say, people from Black Africa. I did a program which I'm sure you've watched, a special BBC panorama called Breaking into Britain. I was part of that. Went to Nigeria and tried to enter Britain, going through the land, going through the Sahara Desert, coming into Europe, using forged papers. And the experience, the kind of people, the hundreds of thousands of people, and you're hearing every day. This week alone, we got the biggest number of migrants crossing the channel from France. 850, that was a record in one day, that managed to cross into Britain. They are sort of pushing them now. All the numbers are coming in, left, right, and center. But many of these are just not your ordinary person. It's someone who, owned a business, owned a house, maybe even a family home that was sold to raise money to give to traffickers to bring them over. The kind of integrity or respect as a person that you lose, losing yourself to sort of come and become a refugee, seeing yourself probably mopping floors in a particular place when you are sitting in an office with ties and a driver and workers at home. This has a mental aspect to it that there's no way that you can pretend that this will not have an impact. And the issue of immigration actually that you've touched is really bigger than, sometimes we even wish to confess, because it goes wider. It touches a lot of things, ennaku z'amazaalibwa saagala biteeka mu Lungereza, ennaku z'amazaalibwa ezikyuka, amannya agakyuka, nosanga nga you have to leave that, oyutuka n'omuyita erinnya n'alimanyiira. There are all these things that we actually have to go through. But fantastic. Thank you very much, Ajat Sarah. It is fantastic. I see a hand up. I'll just get this person in so that we can try and bring them in. Fazil, Mayanja Fazil.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Welcome to the conversation.
Oh, thank you very much for this wonderful conversation, which is really quite interesting. But for me, the way I see this topic is that you see, like the diaspora has different generations, and different generations have different problems, and they have had different challenges, and they have different ways of how to approach these particular challenges. For example, our grandfathers and mothers that came here in the 60s or 70s, 80s, 90s as a result of the turmoil in the country, as well as those ones that came in the 90s, 2000s, and now we have a generation that has come from 2010 to date. And I think the problems are quite diverse in one way or the other. But I would like to point out a few issues here and there using different diasporan communities. When I came here, I think something like 8 years ago, I also went through, you have mentioned the issue of immigration. I never had a problem with immigration, but I had a problem of loneliness, okay? Living in a community where I was the only Black person, and the rest of the people were definitely white.
Did they try to touch your skin to see if you are real?
No, they didn't try to touch my skin. But what I found out is that the community was very fast. Everyone is out there looking for the next paycheck, working very hard, working 9 to 5. You don't get to meet people. And, like in Uganda, you might go to an arcade, visit your friend, sit and talk about issues and things like that, or go and watch a football match and things, things of that sort, just to have that sort of camaraderie with different individuals and make friends and create a community around yourself. So, I would be just in the house alone. You have everything, you have the internet, you have movies, you have everything, and you also have a job, but you still feel that sense of, not fitting into the society, and also homesickness in one way or the other. But then I realized that there is a very, there is something that amongst, especially, I think Ugandans, there is a problem whereby we lack cooperation as a community. If you look at the Somalis, I don't know if at all you have managed to look into the Somali community. I know they have their challenges, but I've been making some research about the Somalian diaspora, which is quite interesting because they are more successful in the diaspora than back home. If you go to South Africa,
they can't stand each other back home, but they are very good when once away from home.
Yeah, if you go to South Africa, they have something called Little Mogadishu. If you go to the United States of America, there's a place called Minneapolis. And in Minneapolis, there's a very big Somali community. In fact, if you go there, you actually realize that you might think that you are in Somalia, not in the United States of America. And
I can attest to that. I have been there and I've done some programs.
Yeah. And even if you go to Kenya, the Kenyans are so fascinated about how Somalis do business, how they help each other, and how they pull each other out of the drains. I was reading and making research about them, and you see that if a Somali reaches in a country or in a particular place in the diaspora, he reaches, and fellow Somalis who came before him are the ones that ensure that they pull him up, introduce him to the community, and they gather resources or money, lend him money, interest-free, and make sure this person starts up a business and gets each and every support that he needs in one way or the other. As a matter of fact, that has helped these people to create a very robust community in the diaspora. So all the kind of help that we need, mental health, physical, whatever, mental health, financial help, and, you know, induction into these communities, I think these guys have really have some sort of a blueprint in one way or the other. And I think,
that is a statement.
but I think that is a mentality. I don't know why people say that particular mentality. Yes. And I'm not one person who would really believe in that sort of mentality. I believe in if I come to Sheikh KAYIRA and I have a problem and I think we can have a solution, why wouldn't we sit and sort it out?
I think there's a problem of honesty. Abantu olumu omuntu omuwala na pound bitano natazikomyawo.
But then the issue is, I think it's upon us to break that particular chain. It's upon us to break that particular chain.
And I think that's when people end up not lending, because sometimes you're in that predicament and somebody comes to you, Musao, you know, you're in a permanent job, help me with this money. You help them because they're, you know, your fellow people, and you don't see them again.
Yeah, but what is interesting is the other issue that I would like to bring about, the panelists and everyone, and I think it's the point I would like to wind up with. When we come to the diaspora, we are job seekers and not job creators. If you go to the Somali community, they are more of job creators rather than job seekers. And you'll find that they have created, you know, for example, if you look at an example of Minneapolis, it's said it's a state. I don't know if it's a state or a city, but they're not really used to hot, spicy food. But the Somalis manages to create their own restaurants, their own spicy food, and, you know, impose their own culture to these people, wearing their veils, wearing their hibayas, and they have like streets and shops where they sell, you know, their culture wear and all other businesses, and, you know, setting up so many businesses in one way or the other. For me, what I've seen is that whenever we, especially we who come from maybe sub-Saharan Africa, whenever we come to Europe, we want to be employed. We want to seek jobs, looking for jobs. And you, Mr. KAYIRA, you know that very well, that if you are in a job, you know, anytime you can be fired, anytime you can be laid off, and that insecurity alone, you know, cannot let you settle in one way or the other. But there are so many other jobs.
Now, Fazil, I'll just put to you a question as you want, because I need to bring Rita in.
Yeah.
The time is suddenly running so fast.
True.
Ajara here was quickly saying in Uganda, you can visit people at work for Wali. However, in England, there's no visit to people at work. So that increases your stress. So my question to you, Fazil, is you've spoken about these communities and how they've managed to do this. Probably it might actually be part of the solution, because from the submission that Dr. Kalunji made and Justin and then Rose, very lastly there, it looks like all of us are traumatized. All of us have mental issues from the reasons that we are brought in. You bring immigration, you bring the stress of phone calls from Uganda, you bring in houses or plots that were never built, you bring in the whole idea of being employed. It looks like all of us now have this sort of have one mental issue of one sort or the other. How would you suggest then? Because our cultural upbringing, our state of let me put it this way: our mentality has not been to work like the Somalis have done it. The way they are in terms of the community, the way they sit as a community, is not how we sit. It has to start from home somehow. For them in Somalia, it hasn't worked politically, but socially it does work. How can we build? How would you suggest that we can build something?
All right, that's a very interesting point that you bring across. You should also understand that the diaspora community, we don't see ourselves as Ugandans. We see ourselves as Northerners, Westerners, Bacholi, Basoga, Lukbara, and all that kind of stuff, which is really very, very backward. I think first and foremost, we should see ourselves as Ugandans. We should try as much as we can to bring all these communities together. And when we see ourselves as Ugandans, then we can try to pull each other up in one way or the other. The other thing is that we need mentorship programs for people who have been here for long and who have been in the system for quite long. If you can pull up one or two people, if, for example, we can use technology that is available to us, you can use the internet, we can to connect to Ugandans who need support, Ugandans who have just arrived in these particular countries, who need mentorship, who need to venture into particular businesses. For example, if someone is doing a particular business, you know, most people think that when you're here, you're supposed to be doing businesses like, you know, like maybe transportation, those sophisticated businesses. But there are businesses that are good that people can do. You can set up your own, maybe gardening. If someone is good at gardening, you can set up a mentorship program for people who would like to enter gardening, or people who would like to do things like maybe window cleaning or oven cleaning, or, you know, setting up shop in, you know, different things. So most of these things make a lot of money, or photography, videography, even things like making online money. Now, those are areas that I know very well, you know, how to make money online and things of that sort. Some things you can do there.
Thank you very, very much.
So,
I won't be
yeah.
stopping you so that I can bring in.
No worries. Yeah, thank you very much.
But that is fantastic presentation. Thank you so much. Some few quick texts before I go on. Daniel says mindset. He said, I think he refers to it as mindset change. Let me just see that. Run away. Sorry, I'll just try. Definitely mindsets. That's Farida. I'll try to get Daniel's. Abu Mustafa, first of all, says Ugandan parents should teach the young people to be proud of being Ugandans. I think that is really important, because that's one of the first things that we lose when we come here. People feel almost sorry to be Ugandans. Mindset change is very vital, and having such platforms or meetings like this one will help bring people closer. Justin, I think you see how we've gone into mental issue, mental health, but how suddenly we have sort of delved out of that, and we are already looking at the bigger picture. This is probably providing a solution to a mental health issue that could easily have come in here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just a quick one to say, I'm a person of bigger pictures. Like everything that Mr. Is it Fazil has described. These are things that we do. For example, we've got MBS for mental health in UK here. In Liverpool, a Kenyan once asked me, I did a program with the police where I collected a lot of Ugandan youth, young people from 13 to 19, and we did an expo for them to look into what happens in the police, and they visited different units. And somebody said to me, what's that got to do with mental health? It creates resilience, it creates confidence, it creates self-esteem. If people have a low self-esteem, mental illness will be a problem, isn't it? So he was talking about businesses. I normally do emceeing at weddings, and I see people who are doing videography, and they are Ugandans, and I'm happy. You ask somebody, who did your decor? A Ugandan. Who did your food? A Ugandan. We just need to pull each other together. He spoke about generations. Do you know that I do some youth programs here for mental health, and there's a family that parents don't speak, but their children are best friends. So pull those children together. They will help each other in future. Leave the parents out of the picture if they fail to get on. So it's things like that where we need to do.
Justin. Thank you very much. Now I'll bring in Rita. Rita, if you can unmute yourself, please. I've just put you on unmute. Just to say, because Justin, you are mentioning that one of the things that we are beginning to look outside now to close all these barriers that we have had as communities. For example, we have initiated a project in Uganda. We have launched London Village, which is the first one as a diaspora. We are having almost 120 families that have come in to settle in one area. This is part of the effort, the energy that you take back home. It hadn't happened that these people from the diaspora, unrelated or probably people that know one another, and they've called each other. We've gone and bought land, and we are establishing the first estate called London Village. Or Village Londres, because there was already a name like London Village. And this is one of the ways to sort of say we are here, but we can still take our efforts back home and make an impact. I beg your pardon. Hi, Rita. Go ahead, please.
Okay. It's fine, Waswa. Thank you. Hello, good evening, everyone. Bernard, thank you so much for this program. It's really brilliant that people can discuss ideas, and it's not like just a few people. So it's like everyone is given the opportunity. So all the ideas you've discussed, like you said, I think everyone is traumatized and everyone has their own mental state. Everyone has their issues. One thing I keep on telling people is that we're all foreigners. Some people think because I've been here 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, I'm different. Yes, you can be different because your experience will be different from someone who's been here like 2 years, but that doesn't remove the fact that you are a foreigner. Once you're out there, they will never say, oh, you're part of us. You'll never be white. No matter what you do, you will never be the indigenous of the country. You will not. So it's all about understanding that we have to help each other. If you have an idea and you know it's going to help you as a person, look at your neighbor as well. When I say neighbor, your Ugandan friend, your Ugandan relative, how can it help them? But the problem is also, our community, people, once they know, okay, this person has an idea. Let me say, Musawo Justin, had an idea about mental health. Some people are very biased.
Yeah.
They'll be like, oh no, why should I go and ask for help? Okay, our African people have that mentality. But then you live alone to appreciate the fact that Chiringa Bonogamba, a teacher tajja kubeera musawo. Omusawo tajja kugenda agambe nti no oba nti amateacher. No, buli omu alina different profession. So bw'oba omanyi someone ng'ali knowledgeable about in a certain field and you need help, put the ego down and ask for help. Our people baagala nnyo okwogera character assassinating people. People will hear, oh, Rita, I'm normally known like Rita Nalongo. Oh, Rita Nalongo. They won't even know you as a person, but they will hear from what people are saying. And you never know, they might need something from me. But because they've never got to know me on a level of one-to-one, ne babeera nga bali mu buzibu, naye ng'ate okwebuuzaako kisinga okugenda okwetta.
Rita, you are there, Gatona again. What do you do? Because it sounds like you do something that you probably need to know since we are getting. Just like Rose left before I could ask her, but I think Justin did mention about how we talk about.
As in, what do I do as in professionally?
Well, you sounded like you do something that we might be able to tap into, and I think that we are dealing with our mental health.
So I'm not in mental health. I'm in adult nursing, but I did my master's in social work and I did my first degree in policy and management, health and social care. So I've dealt with people in various ways. But the problem with our Ugandan community, tebagala kutapinga into the knowledge.
Yeah,
let me say you will write a post and Mobutu fits from the heart and you want to help people out there, because some of us togenda gendo to to explain or do this or do that or you need to do this. But once you hear little bits in the community, you put out a post, just kind of like an iceberg. You're tapping on that, telling them, you know what, this is where the issue is. How are we going to deal with it? But our Ugandan people, but in this, I don't know what's wrong with us.
Now, Rita, the problem is I've had this statement made so many times and across the board. The problem is I think we need to start somewhere. It starts with you, because complaining about Ugandans in understanding. But what I'm saying is, otandikane role yo noganze kuwange kino Rita Chemkoze.
Yes.
I've started with this, so maybe someone can pick up from that, because quite often what you hear is us complaining but without providing solutions.
No, what happens? What happens is, let me say we'll put up like meetings. Let me say I live in Manchester. So in Manchester, they will say, okay, we have this meeting. In that meeting, people might think, oh, is this organization organizing this meeting? But you don't know what's included in that meeting. You don't know what's going to happen. If you're free and you have the time, just go there. Listen, they say knowledge is power. sometimes people will be thinking, oh, she loves coming to happening places. You're not there for happening. Maybe happening will happen later on, but you're there to get the knowledge.
Yeah.
So how are you going to get the help?
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Reach out to people. If you know someone stop being biased,
Up into that.
Yeah. So like our children, I have children myself, but I realize that our children, when they get to an age whereby they understand what's going on in the community, they don't want to be there anymore. They'll tell you, oh, mommy, no, me, I'm not going there. Oh, mommy, oh, you're Ugandan people. Oh, mommy, no, me, I'm not going to gossip. So the kids hear these things in the community. And one of the gentlemen said that, for example, but I keep on telling parents, what are you showing your children? If you're gossiping about other people in your own home, these kids are hearing. And these kids are friends to other children as well. So
Fantastic. Rita, I'll just come in there simply because of time. I can see we have 11 minutes to go. I can only thank you
so
very, very much. And Farida is saying, but they just put you down, Rita. So she's talking about Ugandans putting you down. But someone, before you go, Sadi here was saying, no, it's Kiza. It says, there's a lot of stressors around us, and the only way is to invest in resources to keep your mental balance stable. These mediators of a stable mental include social and family support, partner support, and this bring in a feeling of support and safety, hence mental stability. I hope you would agree with that, Rita, wouldn't you?
I do agree with that. Your partner, even the mental issues.
Yes.
If you feel that's happening, you have friends, talk to someone, seek for help. I'll keep on telling people, put the ego down, in an accident, no take out preventative measures.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you very much, Rita. Fantastic conversation. Aida, please unmute yourself. Aida. Assalamu alaikum.
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Mukono gubade gutandisa okufuuyirira kakasa, but I'm sure you can hear how interesting this is. It gets more interesting.
I was going to leave because I just came back from work.
Oh, no. Good,
Please
go ahead. To mental issue, mental health.
Yeah, mental health.
Experts on here. Yes, please. Anything you want to share?
Basically, mental health. The problem between Aba and Uganda. Some of the Uganda.
Mental health.
Mental health. Problem between Aba and Uganda. Some of the Ugandans are ignorant. I'm sorry to say. Kubanga nze nja kuwaako example gye nkolera. Omuntu ayinza okujja nga bamusindise wa agency. N'ajja okubeera nga azze okukola ku ward. N'omulaba nga accent yeewaffe naye n'akulaga nti ajja kwogera naawe Luganda. N'abuuza omuntu ekintu n'ogamba kale ono weewaffe osanyuka nnyo. This is the first country wano si wensoose okubeera. I was in Scandinavian. Naye I met some black people nasanyuka. Ng'era twekuŋŋaanya wamu abantu nga bakola ebintu nga we gather together. Naye wano woyagalako okubeera nti noobeereko n'abantu tebaagala bamanya, ate Abannayuganda abasinga tebaagaliza, buli omu ayagala kubeera waggulu, instead of okubeera nga tweyamba twezime nga gundi endala. Abanigeria, Abanagana, naye tetujja kuvaayo. I'm sorry, time eweddeyo naye mbale ngenda kwogera bingi. Eyo ye problem gye tuyina eyo, sister gyagambye tuyina ego ey'ekisiru eyo.
No, it's quite very interesting, Aida. Thank you very much. Ngenda ku 75 W Radio. 75 was Barais Magoriyo. Go ahead, please.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
KAYIRA ngose ki.
No. But then nsanyukidde kujja ku mind 75 anti badde ndoza isima mu studio lirasa zeewo naye alabikeko.
Kizibu.
Badde nsanyuse nga mulinzi.
Kizibu, thank you very much for the wonderful topic. This is a very huge topic, and it's nice to see that so many people are willing to talk and contribute. Kubanga, so many, unfortunately, people don't get to socialize a lot because not many people are within the community. So most times when people meet up, they're having fun, maybe at a club or party somewhere, and it's very hard to tell someone your problems when you're at a party. And then those in the community, you find that sometimes when you're in the community, we tell the wrong people our information, so you end up telling someone your information who you shouldn't be telling. There are some people out there waiting to receive bad news about you so that they can go and spread gossip, but we have professionals within the community that are willing to listen, that are willing to help. So be careful whom you tell stuff about yourself. I remember there's something, the lady that you have in, the mental health specialist that you have in, there's something she mentioned, that men crying, and basically there's one time when I was given a report on the youth. Basically, we organized the event, my committee, and we set up an event whereby I was telling parents, that it was a parents event, so I was telling parents about the information we found from the youth, the things they are suffering from, and for all of a sudden, I had a long list that I was going to literally tell the parents, but then all of a sudden, as I'm starting to speak, I just started crying. And I was like, whoa, I have no idea how, why, literally. So when she said it, I remembered that bit, but then obviously I spoke to those ahead of me, like obviously the specialists that we had within, and literally something, this is most of the things these youths were telling me, there are literally things that me myself I went through basically, and maybe sometimes I didn't even know, like things like this could affect you or whatever, so being that these kids are going through the same things that maybe even me myself growing up from here, I went through, so that's something that probably triggered that. But obviously without networking with the right people, you would not know that. And another thing is parents are unable to literally help their children because them themselves are literally suffering. So it's very hard for parents to help their young people that are suffering when they themselves need help. And it is the topic that we're talking about tomorrow on bridging the gap, because I don't know, most of you saw the video that's been going viral where the parents met her daughter in the chicken shop, and literally they had, everything just went crazy, so there was a total disrespect. I don't know if all of you have seen that video, and it is something that we are discussing tomorrow in Bridging the Gap, because parents are suffering and they have no idea where to turn to, and they have no idea what to do, and it is something that is literally happening right now. So parents, tomorrow we're discussing what leads to children disrespecting their own parents. It is something that's happening, and it's at a high pace, because they literally don't know where to turn to, they don't know where to go. So tomorrow we're discussing that, because parents, please don't keep quiet. Help is there.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
From 7 o'clock.
So I'll just bring in Akaya and Justin, please, as we come towards the end of the program, I'll be asking you sort of the takeaways that we will be thinking about, the takeaways that we take from this particular conversation. To see, we've seen the practical aspects, and the interesting thing is how the conversation has moved away. We have acknowledged that mental health is an issue, but we've dealt with the issues that lead to this, and now we are dealing with the issues. We are trying to see how do we move away from this. We're sort of looking ahead. Instead of just remaining in the problem, we are seeing the practical things that we can do to sort of make our lives much better. So probably be thinking about that. I'll come to you. Akaya Chivumbi, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Welcome to the conversation.
Alhamdulillah. Sewa Sheikh nzo ojja kunkyusiza mu luzungu, njagala kwogera mu Luganda.
Wogere ani aganyi.
Olw'ensonga kati mba nsookerako. Nga waliwo omwami mabegako wali yagambye nti ebizibu birimu classes 2 oba 3. Birimu abajja edda, n'abajja eddaddako, n'abakajja ebiseera bino. Kati nze njogera mu kiseera we najjira wano emyaka nga 2 egiyise. Abantu bangi ekizibu ekisookera ddala bakyogedde, kyo sijja kukyogera, ekyokuyita mu home office. Naye nze nga sinaba na kutuuka mu home office, ekizibu ekyasooka okunkuba is change of environment. Nali e Uganda, nali musajja musomesa nga nyimirira ku assembly abaana 1200 ne bawuliriza nti mugamba ki. Naye bwe natuuka wano omulimu gwe nasooka okufuna gwali gwa kirininga kasomero. Bwe ntuuka kasomero natuuka essaawa za kawera 9 naye nga tulina okutandika okukirininga ssaawa 9 n'ekitundu. Ne batugamba nti mu bakirina temwegatta mu baana mugende muyimirire wali abaana bamale okuvaawo mulyoke mujje. Eyo shooko yokka gye nafuna ne ŋŋamba nti kakati nze sikyali musomesa kwegamba sikyali muntu. Ekyo kyokka kyasooka ne kinkuba mu kiseera ekyo ne ŋŋamba sigenda kulwa wano ngenda kudda ewaffe. Naye bwe nalowoozaamu gye nvudde ne ssente ze ntaddemu ne ŋŋamba nti nzireyo nga n'akapoloti sikalina n'akayumba sikalina okwejjanjaba nze kennyini nga sigenze na wa musawo jasi. Ne ŋŋamba nti olumala okuzimba ennyumba yange bwe kapa nga ŋŋenda ewaffe.
Myaka emeka olwo egiyise?
Olwo nga ndeeta intention
ngamba kati bwe twogerera bino emyaka giyise emeka ennyumba yali erina okugwa?
Kuva mu 2022.
Ennyumba teggwana.
Obaali awo. Kakati sebo buli lwe nazuukukanga ku makya buli lwe nafunanga ekinyize nga ŋŋenda ku kali ka intention kange kensetinze nga ŋŋamba kazita olumala okuzimba ennyumba yange nga ŋŋenda. Ennyumba bwe nagimala ne ŋŋamba naye nzireyo e Kampala nzire mu busomesa banfuge. Kankoleyo ka business. Olumala okukola ka business bwentyo ne ŋŋenda nga nnyongezaayo. Naye buli lwe nasetinganga ekiseera ne mmanya nti waakiri kino nja kifuna mu mwaka gumu oba ebiri nga kimpaamu obuwerero. Kakati bwe nalaba nga byonna almost mbikoze mbimazeeyo naye ate era ekyokudda eka nga tekijja ne ŋŋamba kati kangende ntomera eno ebyennyumba. Naye abantu abamu ekisinga okubaleetera obuzibu kubanga yakatuuka wano n'asetinga target ng'eri very high. Kakati buli lwafunamu ene interruption nga target yalaba tagenda kugimiitinga eringa obwongo bwo bubeera buzitowereddwa buli kaseera. Era nze amagezi gempa abantu tebasetinga target ziri very high. Njagala kuzimba kalina, njagala kuzikola bwenti. Bw'otandikira ku kitono owulira nga obwongo bwo bukisobola okukihandolinga.
Very good.
In the end,
Justin is taking note of that.
In the end, wesanga nga ate okoze n'ebinene naye nga ate tobisetinze nga binene. Awo we nalabira ssebo.
Amin. Kulikayo ssebo. Amin. I'm sure bonna bawulidde ssebo naayitaga ne translation as it is.
Wayinza okuba watawulidde ssebo.
If there is anybody who has not heard, I think Akaya Kivumbi has raised very, very important points here, talking about his personal experience. The shock, the culture shock, I think the one that Dr. Kalunji did mention and Justin emphasized, Rose came back to it as well, and Rita even, pushed more. I think actually Hajat Sarah also did put or panovate that into shape, which is the idea of the whole perception coming from Uganda, where he was a teacher in charge of a school with students, looking up to him, coughing, and they would all be on their knees. And then coming, the first job he gets following this situation, after his immigration situation, the first job he gets is as a cleaner in a school. Yes, there at 3 o'clock. I've been a teacher, as a supply teacher. That's the worst, almost one of the worst positions to be in, but you survive somehow. Abana babalinze kadeka 3:15 kawere naye gwo omusomesa ate gwosinga n'okutawomera akavuga n'ogira okugenda okusaala esitwa nawe baze Mungu okuyisa mu bulamu. He finds himself at 3 o'clock. He's supposed to start cleaning at 3:30. Babagamba cleaners go on the side. You cannot mix up with the students. That really left him shocked. But he had a dream and he set his goal, which has put him well. 2002, he was promising himself once he builds the house, he will go back home. I'm sure that house is long finished. He's still here. Thank you very much. I'll bring Amina Amba and then we'll conclude our conversation tonight. It's 2 minutes past 10 o'clock. Oh my God, we are supposed to be wrapping up, but Amina, you have the microphone, please.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'll try and be a bit fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry I came in a bit late.
No.
So basically, I'm not going to elaborate much, but I'm going to use my experience. I'm going to refer to mental health. So basically, in my understanding, I feel like our men are more at risk or have already suffered more than us. I'm talking about them coming from home and the way they are still are here.
Yes.
Because anyway, in my experience, I had my kids with a man whose dad wasn't in his life. And basically that man didn't even know the role of a dad. So him coming here, we had the kids. He thought he was playing the role, but he really wasn't. And to me, it was more of a mental health thing. And I've met so many Ugandans in Salabeds. Those are areas where you would meet so many like Ugandans. So their behavior, the way they're treating us, our sisters, you see some of it is not really intentional. It's something to do with mental health. So I'm actually calling upon the nurses, the mental health specialists, because I'm from the adult side, but I'm calling upon the nurses, the mental health to give us that information, provide it to our maybe mosque, churches, the places where we gather, so that people can access the help which is available, because most of the men, they stay indoors, they work these ridiculous shifts whereby they are not available to seek this. So maybe if it's available in those places where they will go to like celebrate to get my talk and everything, they will be able to access that. I think that will help them. And another thing anyway, I find that our people who come in here and they don't integrate. They basically have their little businesses. They don't integrate with other people. This is the population which still behaves the way we used to back home, because they haven't integrated. And I feel that our people who came here before us, I've been here 10 years plus, but we've got people who've been here 20 years plus, like Sheikh himself, maybe. So you guys are meant to welcome us, prepare us, tell us what's UK, what's in England, what's London. That will help, basically that's gonna prepare us emotionally. Our mental health won't be affected as bad. We won't go through all these different things we are going through if we were prepared by our sisters and brothers who came before us. I think that would have helped as well.
I think Fazil did mention that. Fazil did mention about the networks. No, not at all. I'm not saying you're repeating. The way you are making your point is your point, and therefore it's very valid. All I'm saying is he brought the example of the Somalis and how they help one another whenever one arrives, how they put themselves together to help this person to settle in. There are Ugandans who do that. I know quite a number, but they are few and far between. So we need to have a network that is clear, where we can be assured that when a person arrives, at least there is a place that they can go to and they know where to start from, instead of just being an individual thing.
And the last thing, Sheikh, I just feel like I think it was the Caribbean nurse who is anyways got a background of diabetes, so the Jamaican men wasn't coming to the GPs to have their diabetes levels or status checked. So what she did, she went into the barbers, and that's where she found those men. So she was doing the bloods for diabetes from there. And once she saw that the levels weren't acceptable, she was sending them to the GPs. So I just feel like the mental health nurses, psychiatrists, all these our sisters and brothers, they need to forcefully visit those areas, target our people.
Justin, I'm sure you're getting that. Time to start.
Target our people, speak to them, get them to come into their clinics.
If you ask Pascal, he will tell you he knows. If you ask Pascal, Pascal ajja kunnyonnyola nti amanyi musawo. I've been on it since 2004.
That's perfectly fine. Amina, is that it from you, so that we can wrap up now?
Yeah, thank you so much.
No, thank you very much. Now, I'll just bring in now Justin Musau, Justin, to wrap up. We'll finish our conversation tonight. We've gone 7 minutes for the program. My sincere apologies for Mr. started late again because of technical issues, but I'll just read a few messages and then I come to so Justin so that we conclude our program. Very good points, by the way, the chat room. Very nice conversation. Today has been really, really rich, and I hope that we can actually continue. But this is the style, Justin. It's your first time probably coming over, but this is the style in which that we use for this particular global community conversation in this program. Nobody's a guest. We are all people that know one another. Anytime you come in, you just become a part of the conversation. Rita is saying our men need to understand they need to relearn some things. And a message from Aida, when I was in Finland, I almost lost it because of not eating matoke. That was, you see, that it's quite interesting what could cause a mental health issue. Mayanja for this says, good points, a great point. Amber from Farida, our men need to understand, okay, they need to relearn. That was from Rita. Can I just say that some people use their traumatic situations to become better people in themselves? And that is from Fauzia coming in there. Can you highlight issues of building resilience in our workplaces, especially with regards to racism? Justin, I think that's for you, and it's from Sarah, who says, can you please highlight issues of building resilience in our workplaces, especially with regards to racism? Okay, and then Farida says, so can we have your contact, please? I think you can see it's already beginning to make impact. Please, we shall put, if you can just type in your number, your contacts into the chat room, that will help people to pick it up, and then we can actually probably provide that. Kisa says, designated points for office to handle this in need. Skills of non-blame should be employed, or non-BME should be employed. Have more support. The emphasis from Kisa here on what is needed. Jackson Egesa, another new guest in the conversation, says fear, guilt, depression, despair, powerlessness, all labels which are not accurate for the person feeling the emotion. What matters most is teaching or training people on how to change their, I think it's their attitudes. All right, yes, but that's it. So Justin, I'll come to you now, please, just to sort of, and I guess I think added a point here, which I think is important. It says, mentally we all need fixing. It's just that the state of your emotional vibrational status, oh my God, a lot of concoction and across words there. I'm sorry I came on late. Next time I will discuss. It says mentally we all need fixing. And I think that's one takeaway that we have tonight. Listening to what has been said, listening to all these causal factors, it looks like we all need fixing. Justin, to you now as we wrap up. Our takeaway.
Oh, many thanks for inviting me today. First of all, it's been amazing. It's been really interesting to see that people can cover all the theories of mental illness without a professional having to talk about them. We've forgotten the genetic factors, but we've covered social, environmental, and everything. Amazing. One takeaway, if you go onto YouTube and you type Justin Nachimuli Chigozie, you'll find a lot of videos I have made on mental illness, types of mental illness, triggers, both in Luganda and English. If you subscribe to Mind, Body and Soul, Musawa Justin Nachimuli Chigozie. I've seen a lot of people here who have already subscribed, people like Rita, I think people that follow those videos. They've been useful. Some student nurses have actually come back and used those videos and checked me out as well. If we've got a website, and it's mindbodyandsoul.org.uk, because our organization is called MBS, which is Mind, Body and Soul. So it's well known in Liverpool and Manchester. If you go onto that website, we've got a referrals form, a volunteers form, and we've got all the contacts on there. If you send me a message, I'll receive it immediately and get back to you.
Sorry, while you are still speaking, I'll just add to the fact that where we are in the conversation tonight, for those who have just joined us for the first time, 75W Radio is actually a community radio, a big community radio. Actually, might be the biggest Ugandan radio, and we want to improve it. I left everything that I would be doing at the BBC to concentrate efforts on this radio. So make use of this, and I'm sure we can get some of your stuff and be able to share it on the website. It's 75wradio.com, or you can actually just go to Facebook, which might be easier, where the videos, and there are different programs that are done on different days. So Mondays, there's something. Tuesdays, there's this Come Talk with KASSIM KAYIRA. Wednesday, there is Bridging the Gap. On Thursdays, there's Parents Forum, so which is very, very important. Again, you can go. Friday, there's the economic bit, where you can know what to invest, even back home and so on. And that might actually come in handy. So all these, let's make this our station. It doesn't matter if you're Muslim or not, you are Ugandan, you are East African, this is a place that you can actually start benefiting. Justin, I bring it back to you, but I thought it was very important for us to know. If we have we can go to, this might be a starting point for people to be able to come and gather information.
Absolutely, that's wonderful, because we can reach out to each other, which is a very, very good thing. So takeaway things for tonight. Our chairman, by the way, Mr. Akaya Chivumbi, he's the chairman, Liverpool community.
Oh, fantastic.
Amazing man. So some of the important things that I saw covering mental health: know your community, have an identity. Somebody mentioned we lose our identity when you come here and you change your name, your date of birth, but know within your heart what your identity is. It will help you to feel comfortable and settled within the community that you live in. Who can you reach out in your community when you're in a situation? Look out and see who you can trust. I don't think I've been to 20 houses on a party in Liverpool, but I might have been to 20 houses to support a family. So know where you have to be and at what point in life you need to be there. Somebody mentioned a very important point about generations. We've got different generations in the diaspora. Know what generation you can change and who you can't change. Now, I cannot change my mother. She's 68, but I might be able to change my sister who is 20. So for all professionals and people who are trying to guide communities, look at the potentials that you can change, because those children will go back home and change their parents. Somebody mentioned a very important thing about coping mechanisms. It was Dr. Karunji. There are so many things we can do to cope, but we must accept where we are. We are in this community. I came here as a student, stayed as a student, worked through a work permit. I'm British now. Somebody else comes as an asylum seeker, works through that system, but just accept where you are at that moment in time and then move on through a journey of what you can change. Somebody was talking about work and institutional racism. There's a book that's been written about that actually after COVID. But this is real. It happens all the time. The first time I tried to become a deputy ward manager in 2006, a Nigerian himself said to me, "Come on, girl, put your ego down. You're Black. You're not going to get the job." I still went for the job. I went for the job 4 times before I got it. But I got it and moved on to management and moved on to commissioning and moved on to where I am now. So from a band 5 to band 8, it might take you 15 years as a Black person. It might take a white person 7 years. But just know where you are, that you're the minority. Work racism happens. You will ask for annual leave and they won't give it to you, they'll give it to a white person. But you cannot justify that. So we need to build resilience and be able to move in the right directions. Things are not easy, but we are where we are. And if we accept that and reach out for support, our mental health might be better.
Fantastic.
Thank
you very much, Justin. And thank you everyone for a very beautiful conversation tonight. There's nothing I can pay you actually other than thanking you very much. As to tell you, we are live on 75W Radio. It's W Radio, 75wradio.com, or actually on Facebook, which might be an easier way to go in. And we are also live on Umma Connect. Umma Connect as well has many programs actually that run. We've got a women's program on Thursday, which is a big program, actually looks at different things. On Wednesdays, it's a lot of for the Muslims who are probably unaware, Wednesdays there's Sahih Bukhari, which we've been going through with the different topics. On Thursdays, again, on Mondays, Tuesdays, we've got this particular program which runs on both platforms, on 75W Radio as well as Umma Connect. On Wednesday, we've got Sheikh Nkata, who's very popular, as you would know. On Thursdays, then we've got the Muslima sometimes, which juxtaposes sometimes with Dr. Chisule, another very, very big scholar, touching different aspects. So there is a lot that we can actually do, and we would like actually for the community that was unaware, especially of our radio, 75W radio, come and start tapping into this particular area. Please do not miss every Tuesday, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. We are here having a conversation. Rita's hand is up. I'll just allow that before I said goodbye, but I'll just make the exception. Allow me. After I'd heard from Justin, I thought I had said goodbye, but I'll allow that. Rita, go ahead, please. What's burning?
Sorry, it was by accident. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it was by accident. Okay.
Sorry.
Which is a good accident, because then it allows us to say a very good night to everyone. Thank you very much. Let's meet next time. I've enjoyed seeing all the many new faces. Amina Amba, Akaya Chivumbi, Sylvia Karunji, Rose Sali, Sarah Kaumi, Hajat Sarah, Dr. Karunji, who was also new to the conversation, Rukia, Leila Narubega, who has stayed up all the way from Kampala, which must be past midnight now. Hajat Zamzam, Mariam, Texas, Rukia, Farida, Jojo, Teddy Nampima, who could not get their audio on, and therefore we failed to hear her personal story, which I'm sorry we couldn't. Asma Kasuja, all the way in the United States, Sobra, Daniel Bosa, Jamila One, Aisha Baleteriwa, Maz, Sheikh Amlegia, Janat's iPhone, Nilfa, Andy Rita, oh my God, Ida N, Harriet, Haifa, Kiza, Pauline Bagara, Sidrak Atejeka, Sarah N, Wesley, iPhone 13, Fauzia, and Rita. Thank you very, very much. My name is KASSIM KAYIRA, and thank you. Hope to see you next time. The program was Come Let's Talk with me, KASSIM KAYIRA, and we were live on 75W Radio, as well as Umma Connect on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Zoom. Have a very good night. Thank you.